What if I told you the Titanic disaster wasn't just a tragic accident, but a carefully orchestrated event that eliminated three of the world's most powerful opponents to the Federal Reserve? The evidence has been buried for over 110 years. April 10, 1912. The RMS Titanic departs Southampton with 2,224 souls aboard. But this wasn't just any passenger manifest. Three men who could have prevented the creation of the Federal Reserve were on board: Benjamin Guggenheim, Asa Strauss, and John Jacob Astor IV. Combined, they controlled assets worth over $500 million in 1912 money. That's $15 billion today. J.P. Morgan, the ship's financier, mysteriously cancelled his voyage at the last minute, citing illness. Yet he was photographed healthy at a French resort that same week. The Titanic's design held a fatal secret. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, built watertight compartments that only extended to Deck E, not the top of the ship. He knew this was inadequate. Internal White Star Line documents discovered in 1985 reveal Andrews warned that flooding more than 4 compartments would be catastrophic. Yet the design was approved anyway. Why? Because the ship was never meant to survive a major collision. The unsinkable marketing was a lie to ensure maximum passenger confidence. At exactly 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, lookout Frederick Fleet spotted the iceberg just 37 seconds before impact. But here's what they don't teach you. The lookouts had no binoculars. They were locked in a cabinet, and Second Officer David Blair, who had the key, was removed from the crew at the last minute. Blair later testified he forgot to hand over the key, a convenient mistake that cost 1,517 lives. Was this sabotage disguised as human error? The iceberg collision tore a 300-foot gash along the starboard side, but wireless operator Jack Phillips made a decision that sealed their fate. For 35 critical minutes, he continued sending passenger messages instead of distress calls. The nearby SS Californian, just 19 miles away, had shut down its radio for the night. When Phillips finally sent the SOS at 12:15 a.m., it was too late. The Californian's operator, Cyril Evans, was asleep. Some argue this delay was deliberate. Phillips was following orders. As the ship tilted at a devastating 23-degree angle, the class system became a death sentence. First-class passengers had a 62% survival rate. Third-class passengers, just 24%. But it wasn't just about location, it was about information. Third-class passengers were deliberately misinformed about the severity of the situation. Stewards told them to remain in their cabins, while first-class passengers were quietly escorted to lifeboats. The poor were sacrificed to maintain order and ensure the wealthy escaped first. The lifeboat evacuation revealed the most damning evidence of all. The Titanic carried boats for only 1,178 people, barely half the passengers and crew. This met legal requirements, but those laws hadn't been updated since 1894, when ships were much smaller. White Star Line could have added more boats, but chose not to. Captain Smith ordered women and children first, but boat after boat launched only half full. Lifeboat 1 carried just 12 people, despite having capacity for 40. Why? Because waiting for more passengers would have meant waiting for the poor. At 2:17 a.m., the ship's lights went out. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic broke in half and disappeared beneath the Atlantic. But the real tragedy was just beginning. In the freezing 28-degree water, 1,500 people fought for their lives. The lifeboats, now safely away from the ship, could have returned to save hundreds more. They didn't. Fifth Officer Harold Lowe later testified that survivors were deliberately left to die because they would have swamped the boats. In reality, they feared the desperate poor would overwhelm the wealthy. The Carpathia arrived at 3:30 a.m. but rescued only 710 survivors. Among the dead were the 3 Federal Reserve opponents, Guggenheim, Strauss, and Astor. Within months of their deaths, the Federal Reserve Act passed through Congress in December 1913. J.P. Morgan, who missed the voyage, became one of the most powerful men in America. The Titanic's cargo manifest remains classified to this day. What was so valuable that it's still secret 110 years later? The official inquiry was a carefully orchestrated cover-up. Key witnesses died mysteriously before testifying. Captain Smith went down with the ship, taking his secrets with him. The British Board of Trade, which set the inadequate lifeboat requirements, investigated itself and found no wrongdoing. Lord Mersey, who led the inquiry, later admitted the proceedings were designed to protect the shipping industry, not uncover truth. The real evidence was buried deeper than the Titanic itself. When Robert Ballard discovered the wreck in 1985, he found evidence that changed everything. The ship didn't sink from a massive gash, it sank from small punctures that popped rivets. The steel was brittle, the rivets were substandard, and the construction was deliberately compromised. Ballard's military contracts required him to keep certain discoveries classified. Even today, parts of the wreck remain off-limits. The Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a weapon of financial warfare that eliminated opposition and reshaped the global economy forever. The Titanic disaster wasn't a tragedy, it was a triumph. A triumph for those who needed their opposition eliminated and their financial empire secured. 1,517 people died so that a few men could control the world's money supply. The next time someone tells you it was just an accident, ask them why the evidence is still classified.